Back at it again at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Sr. A happy Friday to all of the real ones, and I hope you're getting set to have a fantastic weekend. Coming up on this edition of the program, I sat down on Radio Row with Fran Duffy, who handles PHLY's NFL draft coverage, also, of course, covers the Philadelphia Eagles, used to work for the team, doing a lot of deep dive studies into the film, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen some of those film breakdowns on the Eagles X page. He is so knowledgeable when it comes to X's and O's, but also has a lot of insight on a lot of these NFL draft prospects. So we talked about a bevy of topic matters. What are the Eagles going to do this offseason? Who do they pinpoint in the draft? Top positions of needs. He also said some really interesting things about wide receiver A.J. Brown. He doesn't feel good about A.J. being in an Eagles uniform in 2026, and this is coming from somebody who's very tapped in, who used to work for the organization. So I thought that was very interesting. All of that and a whole lot more coming up right now. Another reminder, to support the show, all of this content is free. Help me out. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that thumbs up icon, like the video, chop it up down in the comments section, share this video on social media, because I take pride in the content that we give you, and I think what we do here on Eagles Now is very special. So do all of that, and here, coming up right now, Philadelphia Eagles Now on this Football Friday, some draft talk and Eagles talk with the one and only Fran Duffy. Enjoy. Interesting offseason coming up for the Eagles. We know that Howie Roseman has known to be an aggressive general manager. This year's a little bit different. He's talked about how they want to retain and pay some of their homegrown players, totally understandable. And so to the common fan, if the Eagles don't make big moves in free agency, they might say, the Eagles kind of stood pat, they weren't aggressive. But in a way, they could also be aggressive by paying some of their homegrown players. So what's your feel on how the Eagles kind of approach the offseason, especially after seeing Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman talk the other day?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like a blessing and a curse when you draft well, right? You draft well, you got good talent. Everybody else wants that talent too, so they have a lot of tough decisions to make at the end of the day, man. I mean, you look at obviously there's the A.J. Brown of it all, but then you have Jahan Dotson's a free agent, Dallas Goedert's a free agent. You go over to the defensive side, Jalen Phillips, Jalen Carter's up for an extension soon, Jordan Davis up for an extension soon, Nakobe Dean's a free agent. You just paid Zach Bond, but you have both corners that are going to be up for eligible or for extensions next year. Reed's a free agent. You can't pay everybody, and so just figuring out and being tactical about, all right, who do we want to make sure we retain? I think it's going to be tough for them to keep a lot of those guys, and so just figuring out who are the guys that we want to invest in. It's always more lucrative, more valuable to keep your own as opposed to going out of house. So that's why when all the stuff came up about Max Crosby a couple weeks ago, I'm like, you don't trade for Max Crosby. You've got Jalen Phillips. Pay Jalen Phillips and don't give up 2 first-round picks to do that, right? So, they've got. I'm sure they would love to be able to keep a lot of those guys, but it's going to be interesting to see which direction they want to take.
If there's a player currently as an in-house free agent who you do think the Eagles bring back, who would it be? If I could pinpoint one, I'd say Jalen Phillips, but medical history, really great scheme fit. But in this edge market, I mean, we're looking at probably $20+ million per year for him.
Yeah, it's similar. I think I feel the same way about Phillips the way I felt about Bond last year, where it's I think they would love to keep him, but the market's going to be pretty big. Now they ended up going to that market for Zach Bond and saying he is a guy that we want to keep here. If you let Jalen Phillips walk, then you're leaning in on Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt, who continue to ascend. When Nolan's healthy, Nolan's awesome. But you say the same thing about Jalen Phillips. It'll be very interesting to see. I think a lot of it will have to do with what does Jalen Phillips and his representation, what do they feel that market is going to look like? And that's all based off the conversations that happened here this week in Indianapolis. So if that market is $20 million, maybe the Eagles can play ball. If that market is $27 million a year, and it's over 3 or 4 years, that's tough, So especially when you're trying to win on the margin, that extra $7 million a year, that might be two, 3 different players that you're able to bring into the organization. And so Jalen Phillips is an interesting one. I would put Reed Blankenship in that same bucket, where I think they would love to keep Reed Blankenship. He is kind of like the glue that keeps everybody together, on the back end of that defense, not just at safety, but at corner and certainly at the nickel and linebacker as well. So what is his market going to look like? Is it going to be $12 million a year? Is it going to be $14 million a year? Is it going to be $10 million a year? so many teams are running some kind of some kind of version of what the Eagles are doing defensively. So being able to add a veteran like that into the mix is going to be something that I think a lot of teams would find value in. That market will be interesting to track.
My viewers and a lot of Eagles fans are tired about this A.J. Brown talk, and Howie Roseman's never going to tip his hand, but his agent here in Indy kind of reaching out to teams, trying to gauge interest. When there's smoke, there could be some fire, and obviously Howie's not going to say, yeah, we're going to trade him. He's going to say, yeah, we value great players and we want to have them back. What's your feel on kind of what happens with A.J.? Is he an Eagle in 2026?
I don't feel great about it. I don't think it's 100%. And it's one of those things like we'll see. I won't feel great about it until it actually happens. There's just been too much smoke about it for the last 2 years to feel really good that he's definitely going to be here. Now maybe it is enough where they change the offensive scheme and you kind of bring him in and say like, hey, like this is what we envision you looking like in this offense, and this is how the pass game is going to operate. I don't know if it's just too far gone. I talk about all the hard decisions they have to make. The decision to part with A.J. Brown, that's as big of a decision as you're going to make because you don't have an in-house replacement, and it's hard to go out and find someone that's going to replicate what he has done. So that's going to be a tough one. I don't feel great about it, though, about him being in Philadelphia.
The draft is your wheelhouse. Eagles sitting at 23, a lot of needs, offensive line, corner, tight end, safety, wide receiver could be a need depending on what happens with AJ. Where do you think the Eagles go at 23?
I do think it's an offensive player. I think that for all the reasons we talked about earlier, where you have all those defensive guys that are ready to be paid, because you're not letting a lot of those guys out. If you're paying Jalen Carter, $30 million a year, you're paying Quinyon Mitchell, $20 million a year, you're paying all these guys big money. Cooper DeJean, north of $18 million a year. All those guys are going to be coming up the next couple of years. That means you need to backfill that with cheap talent on offense. So whether or not A.J. Brown's here, I think that it's either going to be an offensive lineman or it's going to be a wide receiver, a pass catcher in the first round. And I think, honestly, like when you go second round, and or day two rather, they've got 3 picks on day 2 with the comp pick. I would be surprised if it's not like 2 of the 3 picks on day 2 are offensive players. I just think that they need to start to backfill and get more reinforcements there on the offensive side of the ball.
Cost-controlled assets always really important. As far as players at 23, who do you kind of like if we're talking offensive line or wide receiver?
Yeah, it's a really interesting draft because since there's so much ambiguity at the top, that means it's a house of cards trying to track it out. We'll get more clarity in the next several weeks as we get closer. But I think that, to me, offensive tackle, I think they're in a good spot where one of those guys that we're talking about in that range should be there. I really don't think Monroe Freeling from Georgia, the one-year starter at left tackle, I don't think he's going to make it to that point. I think he's going to end up being a top 20 pick when it's all said and done by the time we leave here in Indianapolis. I think that'll kind of be cemented would be my guess. But I think you get into Caleb Lomu from Utah, Maxi Honachor, you get into Vega Ioane from Penn State. I think there are a handful of offensive linemen that right in that early 20s mix, like one of those guys should make it. And if they don't, then you're talking some of these pass catchers. Is it Kenyon Sadiq, who could go 9, or he could fall a little bit. So I think that there are definitely a handful of players that I think that if you get to that, and that's how the Eagles operate, right? Is, hey, this is the cluster of group, this is the tier of player that we're looking at. One of these 8 guys should be able to make it to us, and if it looks like it's not going to work that way, that's when you talk about moving up or potentially moving out.
I was talking to Daniel Jeremiah the other day, and I think it's a deep wide receiver class. He made a point. It's a wide receiver class that features a lot of different flavors. There are big-bodied wide receivers who are possession guys who can go up and get it. There are some speedsters, inside guys, outside guys, X, Y, Z, whatever. Do you kind of see it that way at the wide receiver position? Because if the Eagles don't go wide out round 1, I do think there's some solid wide outs round 2, round 3.
Yeah, I think that it's such a volume position now. It's always going to be like, oh, that's a pretty good receiver class. Now, it's at the very top. Is there the Marvin Harrison Jr. prospect? Is there the Jamar Chase prospect coming out? Like, no. Now guys are going to go. Like Cardinal Tate's going to go in the top 10. Is he an ideal top 10 pick? Probably not. But to your point and to DJ's point, there's always going to be the wide volume, the wide variety of skill sets. So the possession slots, the vertical players, the big possession guys. So I think that depending on what the Eagles are looking for and what they value, they'll be able to find what they need in this class at some point.
Do they go quarterback at some point? Developmental guy, Tanner McKee, going into the final year of his contract. I know you were hanging around Garrett Nussmeier. I think that could be a potential option given the familiarity there. You have a Drew Aller who's polarizing because he's so gifted athletically, but the tape is very sporadic. Could the Eagles go quarterback mid-round to get a developmental guy for the quarterback factory?
Yeah, I absolutely would not rule that out. I think that when you look at it, there's a decent chance that Tanner McKee would get traded this year because if you're trying to extract value from that selection, a guy you spent a fifth-round pick on just a few years ago, if you're able to trade him for, look, if you think he's going to be a starting quarterback for you, you can get a second-round pick. Like going back to the A.J. Feely trade in what was it, 2003, 2002, you can do things like that in today's league. And so it wouldn't shock me if the Eagles got an offer that they really liked for Tanner. You've got to be able to backfill that, and you're not going to do that with a rookie fifth-round pick. Like you're going into a year where you want to be able to compete for the division, get into the playoffs, try and make a run at the Super Bowl. You're going to spend either a high pick or you're going to go and get a vested, proven backup to sit behind Jalen Hurts.
Last one for you. As a guy who digs into the tape and you're very scheme sound, just what do you think about the Sean Mannion hire?
I'm really intrigued. It's going to be really interesting. Everyone you talk to loves Sean Mannion, the guy. It's just hey, he's really bright. He's great with everybody, players, coaches, team. Everybody loves him. But it's a first-time play caller, first time leading the room in that way. Josh Grisard brought in to be the pass game coordinator. He's only got 1 year of experience kind of leading the room that way. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all unfolds. It's a whole new feel for Jalen Hurts. It's a whole new feel for the offensive line. No Jeff Stoutland, whole new run game. It's volatile. I'm very interested to see. It could go any number of ways. At the end of the day, they have a ton of talent, but is AJ Brown back? Is Dallas Goedert back? There's a good chance those guys aren't. Yeah, and so to me, it could go a number of ways. But I'm fascinated to watch it.